My sister Tessa stood in my kitchen, her new engagement ring catching the morning light as she casually announced, "We're taking Chloe's college fund for our honeymoon. Derek and I deserve this after everything we've been through." She said it like she was borrowing a cup of sugar, like she was asking to borrow my car for the weekend. Her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around the coffee mug I'd bought at Chloe's school fundraiser, the one that said, "World's Best Mom" in faded letters. I watched her drain that coffee, the same way she was about to drain the $52,000 I'd saved for my daughter's future. "It's just sitting there in that account doing nothing," Derek added from behind her, his voice smooth as honey poison. "We'll pay you back double in 3 years. My new development project is going to make us millionaires." My 16-year-old daughter Chloe was upstairs, probably already dressed in her Marine Harbor High School uniform, completely unaware that her aunt and future uncle were downstairs planning to steal her dreams. Every morning for 12 years, I'd transferred money into that savings account. $20 here, $50 there, my entire tax refund every spring. The bonus I got for never missing a day at the veterinary clinic where I worked. "Madison, don't look at us like that," Tessa said, setting down the empty mug with a theatrical sigh. "We're family. This is what family does for each other." What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that 3 days earlier, my Uncle Wayne had handed me an envelope that changed everything. Inside were documents about Derek Brennan that would turn their 6-week Bali paradise into the beginning of their worst nightmare. I knew exactly who Derek Brennan really was. I knew about his 3 previous wives. I knew about the FBI investigation. I knew that in 3 months, when they returned from sipping cocktails on the beach and posting their infinity pool photos, they would open their bank statements and collapse when they discovered that every single luxury they'd enjoyed had destroyed their entire future. But that morning in my kitchen, I just smiled and said, "Tell me more about this honeymoon you're planning." Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't saying no. Sometimes it's letting people reveal exactly who they are while you hold the evidence that will bring their whole world crashing down. And as I stood there watching my sister plan to rob my daughter blind, I knew that karma was about to teach her a $52,000 lesson she'd never forget. Life as a single mother had never been easy, but I'd made it work. Every morning at 5 a.m., my alarm would buzz softly, and I'd slip out of bed, careful not to wake Chloe even though her room was down the hall. I'd stand in her doorway for just a moment, watching her sleep peacefully, her biology textbook still scattered across her desk from late-night studying. That quiet moment reminded me why every sacrifice mattered. By 5:30, I was in my 12-year-old Honda Civic, driving through empty streets to Riverside Veterinary Clinic, where I'd worked as office manager for the past 14 years. Dr. Hammond had hired me when I was pregnant with Chloe, desperate for stability and health insurance. Now I ran the entire front office, managing appointments, billing, and keeping the place running smoothly, while Dr. Hammond focused on the animals. "Madison, you're the backbone of this place," he'd tell me during my annual reviews, giving me small raises that I'd immediately calculate into college savings. 3% more meant an extra $40 a month for Chloe's fund. Every penny counted. My lunch breaks were spent in the back office, eating peanut butter sandwiches while researching college programs. Marine biology at UC San Diego cost $32,000 a year. University of Miami was $48,000. Texas A&M was more reasonable at $25,000 for out-of-state students. I had spreadsheets calculating every scenario, every possibility, every pathway to making Chloe's dreams come true. Meanwhile, my sister Tessa lived a completely different life just 20 minutes away in her downtown loft. While I shopped at Goodwill for Chloe's school clothes, Tessa posted photos from Nordstrom dressing rooms. While I drove my aging Honda with 200,000 miles on it, she leased a new BMW every 3 years. The difference? Our parents had given her the down payment for that loft when she turned 25, calling it an investment in her future. When I'd gotten pregnant at 24, they'd given me lectures about responsibility. Madison made her choices. I'd overheard my mother tell her book club friends once, "But Tessa, she's going places. She just got promoted at the dental office, and she's dating this successful real estate developer." That developer was Derek Brennan, who'd swept into Tessa's life 8 months ago at a wine tasting event in the Pearl District. He was everything our parents thought successful looked like. 40 years old with silver touches in his dark hair, always wearing tailored suits, driving a Mercedes he claimed to own outright, talking about property developments and investment opportunities. He treats me like a queen, Tessa gushed at our monthly family dinners, these mandatory gatherings at our parents' house where I'd sit quietly while she dominated the conversation. Last week, he surprised me with a weekend trip to Seattle just because I mentioned wanting to try this restaurant there. Our mother, Ruth, would beam with pride, reaching over to squeeze Tessa's hand. You deserve someone who appreciates you, sweetheart. After all those losers you dated before, finally a real man with ambition. Dad would nod approvingly from his recliner, his eyes lighting up when Derek talked about market trends and equity portfolios. Frank Pierce had worked for the Postal Service for 35 years, but he'd always dreamed of being a businessman. In Derek, he saw everything he'd wanted to be. "What about you, Madison?" Derek had asked during one dinner, his tone friendly but probing. "Tessa tells me you're quite the saver. Must be nice having that security." "I saved for Chloe's education," I'd answered simply, catching the look that passed between him and Tessa. "Such a responsible mother," my mom said, though her tone suggested responsible was code for boring. "Though, Madison, you should think about yourself sometimes, too. When's the last time you took a vacation? Went on a date? You're 41, not dead." "I'm focused on Chloe right now," I'd replied, the same answer I'd given for years. The truth was more complicated. Chloe's father, Jake, had vanished when I was 6 months pregnant, leaving behind empty promises and maxed-out credit cards I didn't know existed. I'd spent 5 years paying off his debts while raising a baby alone, learning that trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every dollar in Chloe's college fund represented a promise I'd made to myself. She would never feel trapped by circumstances, never have to depend on someone who might disappear. "You're too rigid," Tessa would say, examining her fresh manicure while I helped Mom clear the dinner table. "Life is meant to be enjoyed. Look at Derek and me. We're actually living while you're just existing." I wanted to tell her that existing was making sure your child had a future. Living was watching Chloe's face light up when she talked about marine biology, knowing I could make it happen. But I'd learned long ago that Tessa and I spoke different languages when it came to responsibility and sacrifice. The morning Tessa showed up at my house, I was reviewing college brochures with Chloe at the kitchen table. The UC San Diego booklet was spread open to a page about their marine research facility, and Chloe's eyes were practically glowing with excitement. "Mom, look at this research program," Chloe said, pointing to a photo of students working in underwater labs. "They actually let undergrads work with dolphins and sea turtles. This professor, Dr. Martinez, is doing groundbreaking work on coral reef restoration." That's when we heard the key turning in the front door. Only one person besides us had that key. Tessa walked in like she owned the place, Derek following close behind her, his eyes already scanning my living room like he was appraising it for sale. "We need to talk," Tessa announced, not even acknowledging Chloe as she sat down at our kitchen table, right on top of the college brochures. "Derek and I have made a decision about our honeymoon, and it involves you." "Actually, it involves Chloe's college fund," Derek corrected, pulling out his phone to show me pictures. "Look at this resort in Bali. 6 weeks of absolute paradise. Private villas, personal butler service, cooking classes with Michelin star chefs. We've already put down the non-refundable deposit using our credit cards." Chloe's face went completely pale. "What are you talking about?" "Sweetie, go to your room," I told her, but she stayed frozen in her chair, her hand still resting on the UC San Diego brochure. Tessa reached across the table, grabbing my hand with both of hers. "Madison, listen to me. Mom and Dad are giving us access to their retirement account as wedding gift trustees. We'll have complete control over their finances. We'll pay you back double in 3 years, I promise. Derek's new real estate development in Beaverton is going to make us millions." "The Riverside Commons project," Derek jumped in, his salesman voice fully activated. 42 luxury condos, already 60% pre-sold. We're talking about a $15 million development. $52,000 is nothing compared to what we'll make." "Absolutely not," I said, pulling my hand away from Tessa's grip. Derek's face turned red, the charming mask slipping for just a moment. "You're being selfish. What kind of sister denies her own family happiness? That money is just sitting in a bank account doing nothing. That money is for Chloe's education. She can get scholarships, Tessa said, waving her hand dismissively. She's smart, or she can take out loans like everyone else. Why should she get a free ride when you and I didn't? Because I've worked for 12 years to make sure she doesn't start her adult life in debt like I did. Tessa stood up abruptly, and I watched her face transform into the crying performance she'd perfected since childhood. Tears streamed down her cheeks on command. I knew you'd do this. You've always resented me for being happy. You hate that I found love, that I'm getting married, that I'm not stuck being a single mother. Aunt Tessa, that's not true. Chloe finally spoke up, her voice shaking. Mom just wants me to go to college. Stay out of this, Chloe, Derek snapped, his friendly uncle act completely gone. This is between adults. Don't talk to my daughter that way, I said, standing up to face him. Your daughter is going to be just fine, Derek said, his voice turning threatening. But you might want to think about your parents. Their house, their retirement, everything they've worked for is about to be under our control. Trustee powers are very broad, Madison. We could sell their house to fund our investment opportunities. We could restructure their retirement for better returns. All perfectly legal. Get out of my house. Fine, Derek said, guiding Tessa toward the door. But remember this moment when your parents need medical care, when they need someone to manage their affairs. Hope Chloe enjoys community college because that's all you'll be able to afford after we're done restructuring the family finances. 3 hours later, my mother called. Her voice was ice cold. Madison, how could you? Tessa's devastated. She called us crying so hard she could barely breathe. We're restructuring our will immediately to make Tessa and Derek the sole executors. If you can't support family, you don't deserve to benefit from it. My father's voice came through the speakerphone. We're disappointed in you, Madison. Very disappointed. That money sitting in a bank isn't helping anyone. At least Tessa wants to create memories, build a life with someone. You're so bitter about being alone that you can't stand seeing your sister happy. Dad, they want to steal Chloe's college fund. It's not stealing when it's family. It's borrowing. It's investing in relationships instead of hoarding money. We didn't raise you to be this selfish. The line went dead. Chloe was crying silently beside me, her college dreams suddenly tangled in family warfare she'd never asked for. That night, I couldn't sleep. Chloe had barely touched her dinner and went to bed early, her UC San Diego brochure still on the kitchen table where Derek had pushed it aside. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the family photo on the mantel from last Christmas. We looked happy, all of us together, before Derek had completely taken over Tessa's life and turned my parents against me. But what haunted me wasn't their betrayal. It was the manila envelope hidden in my bedroom safe, the one Uncle Wayne had given me 3 days before Tessa's ambush. Wayne Pierce wasn't just my father's younger brother. He was the only family member who'd helped when Jake disappeared. He'd fixed my car for free when it broke down, babysat Chloe when I worked overtime, and never once judged me for being a single mother. His plumbing business was small but successful, and more importantly, he had connections throughout the city from 30 years of working in people's homes. Madison, I need to show you something, he'd said when he stopped by the veterinary clinic that Tuesday. His face was grim as he handed me the thick envelope. I hired a private investigator to look into Derek. Something felt off about him pushing for that trustee arrangement with your parents. Inside were photos, documents, court records that made my stomach turn. Derek Brennan wasn't even his real name. It was Derek Brenfeld, and he had a pattern. 3 previous marriages, all to women with family money. Patricia Brenfeld in Phoenix, divorced after her elderly father's retirement fund mysteriously vanished. Jennifer Brenfeld in Portland, whose family's rental properties were sold without their knowledge. Maria Brenfeld in Sacramento, who discovered $60,000 in credit card debt after their honeymoon to Europe. His real estate business is a shell company, Wayne explained, pointing to incorporation documents. The Riverside Commons development he keeps talking about doesn't exist. These pre-sales, he claims, they're fake contracts with made-up names. Wayne, we have to tell Mom and Dad immediately. I tried, Madison. I went over there Sunday with these documents. Your father threw them in the fireplace without looking at them. Said I was jealous of Tessa's happiness, trying to cause trouble because I'm divorced. Your mother accused me of wanting to ruin the wedding because I wasn't successful enough to understand Derek's business. The private investigator had found more. Derek had already taken out loans against properties he didn't own, using forged documents. He had 17 credit cards under various names. The Mercedes he drove was leased under his second ex-wife's name. She didn't even know. Most terrifying was the FBI notice. They'd been tracking Derek for 2 years, building a federal case for wire fraud and identity theft. He's going to destroy them all, Wayne said quietly. Your parents, Tessa. Everyone who trusts him. Now, sitting in my dark living room after the confrontation, I made a decision. I couldn't save Tessa from herself. My parents had chosen their side, but I could protect what mattered most and maybe deliver some justice in the process. I called Wayne at 11 p.m. I need your help. Whatever you need. Can you access Derek's rental property? The one on Maple Street he doesn't want Tessa to know about? My company did the original plumbing there. I still have legitimate reasons to inspect the pipes. Over the next 2 weeks, we carefully built our plan. Wayne discovered Derek was keeping documents in that rental, evidence of his schemes including falsified loan applications using my parents' information. I found a lawyer, Janet Crawford, who specialized in elder financial abuse. She reviewed the power of attorney documents my parents had signed years ago, standard estate planning that named me as secondary agent if Tessa was unable to serve. These are still valid, Janet confirmed. If you have evidence that the primary agent is committing fraud, you can invoke emergency provisions to protect the assets. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly. I showed up at the wedding with a forced smile, wearing a dress I'd bought at Ross for $29. I sat through the ceremony watching Derek promise to love and cherish Tessa, knowing he'd made the same promises to 3 other women. During the reception, I gave a toast about family and new beginnings that made my mother nod approvingly. Changed your mind about the college fund? Derek whispered when he found me alone at the bar. Have an amazing honeymoon, I replied, raising my champagne glass. Tessa barely spoke to me, too busy showing off for our relatives, telling everyone how Derek was taking her to Bali for 6 weeks, how they'd be flying first class, staying in villas that cost $2,000 a night. She didn't notice the credit card applications Derek had filled out in her name, didn't see the loans he was securing with her signature, didn't realize that every dollar they were about to spend would come back to haunt them. The FBI tip line was anonymous. The information about Derek's location, his plans to flee the country, his fake passport under another name. All of it was documented and submitted while the happy couple danced to their first song. 3 months after they returned from Bali, my phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. Tessa's name flashed on the screen and I could hear her hysteria before I even answered. Madison, something's wrong, she sobbed, her voice cracking with panic. The bank statements, the credit cards, everything's gone. Derek's vanished. You have to come over right now. I drove to her downtown loft, taking my time while she sent text after frantic text. When I arrived, I found chaos. Papers covered every surface of her usually pristine living room. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents scattered across her glass coffee table like evidence of a financial massacre. Our parents were there. Dad slumped on the white leather couch with his head in his hands, Mom pacing back and forth in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. $52,000 in credit card debt, Tessa said, shoving a stack of bills at me. These cards have my name on them, but I never applied for them. I never saw them. He must have been intercepting the mail. She pulled up her laptop, showing me account after account. The Bali trip wasn't paid for with his money. It was all on these cards. The first-class flights, the private villas, the spa treatments, those cooking classes, everything. And there's more. There are personal loans totaling $30,000 that I apparently signed for. Where's Derek? I asked calmly, sitting down across from her. His phone's disconnected. I went to his office this morning, the one in the Riverside building. It's an empty room. The receptionist said no one named Derek Brennan has ever rented space there. Madison, I found these in his desk. She handed me a folder with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers from 3 different women, all with similar stories in the filing documents. Patricia Brenfeld lost her inheritance. Jennifer Brenfeld discovered her identity had been stolen. Maria Brenfeld found out about 100,000 in hidden debts. His name isn't even Derek Brennan, Tessa whispered. It's Derek Brenfeld. Everything was a lie. I looked at my parents. My mother had aged 10 years in 3 months, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying. He had access to everything, she said weakly. We made him trustee with Tessa. He said it would simplify the estate planning. The house? I asked. There's a lien on it. Dad's voice was broken. $40,000 loan we never took out. Our retirement account had $70,000 in it. Now there's $18,000 left. I pulled out my phone and showed them the file Wayne had given me months ago. Every document, every warning, every piece of evidence about Derek Brenfeld. I watched their faces change from confusion to horror to understanding. You knew? Mom whispered, sinking onto the couch beside Dad. I tried to tell you. Uncle Wayne tried to tell you. You chose not to listen. But you could have stopped this, Tessa screamed, standing up so fast she knocked over her coffee cup. You could have prevented the wedding. You could have saved us. Like you tried to save Chloe's college fund? You came to my house to steal $52,000 from your 16-year-old niece. Now you've lost $52,000 to a con artist. Seems like poetic justice to me. How can you be so cruel? Mom asked, tears streaming down her face. I'm not being cruel, I'm being practical. While you were in Bali posting photos of infinity pools and sunset dinners, I was protecting what actually mattered. I pulled out the legal documents Janet Crawford had prepared. 2 weeks after you left for your honeymoon, I invoked the secondary power of attorney to protect Mom and Dad's real assets. The house you think has a lien? I transferred it to a trust I control. That $40,000 loan Derek took out? It's secured against nothing. The retirement account that's almost empty, that was a decoy account I helped set up. Your real retirement fund, the one worth $200,000, is safe in a different institution. They stared at me in stunned silence. But Derek still got plenty, I continued. The $52,000 in available credit and liquid assets he could access. Coincidentally, exactly what you tried to steal from Chloe. My phone buzzed with the news alert I'd been monitoring for weeks. I turned the screen toward them. Derek Brenfeld's face filled the article, his charming smile now a mugshot. Investment advisor arrested at Miami International Airport on federal fraud charges, the headline read. He was trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with a fake passport, I read from the article. The FBI had been tracking him for 2 years. An anonymous tip provided his exact location and travel plans. He's facing 15 to 20 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and bigamy. Turns out he never divorced his first wife, which makes your marriage invalid, Tessa. Tessa collapsed back onto the couch, the weight of everything crushing her. The fairy tale wedding, the paradise honeymoon, the perfect husband, all of it had been built on lies that cost exactly what she'd tried to steal from her niece's future. Tessa moved back in with our parents while she sorted through the wreckage of her 6-week fantasy. The diamond ring Derek had given her, the one she'd flaunted at every family gathering, turned out to be cubic zirconia worth less than $200. She found out when she tried to sell it to pay off one of the credit cards. The jewelry store appraiser actually laughed when he tested it. But he said it was a 3-carat diamond from his grandmother, Tessa had whispered, clutching the worthless ring. The Bali honeymoon they documented so thoroughly on social media became evidence in the federal case against Derek. Every tagged location, every timestamp, every luxury experience helped prosecutors track the financial fraud. Tessa had to hire a lawyer just to prove she wasn't complicit in his schemes. That cost another $10,000 my parents had to borrow from Uncle Wayne. Our relationship would never fully recover, but something unexpected emerged from the ashes. Chloe had watched everything unfold with the intensity of someone studying for the most important test of her life. She saw how quickly family could turn on each other for money, how greed could blind people to obvious lies, how the promise of luxury could make smart people incredibly stupid. "Mom," she said one evening as we looked through her college acceptance letters, "I want to add pre-law to my marine biology major." "That's ambitious, sweetheart. Why the change?" "I want to help people like us. people whose families try to take advantage of them, people who get conned by someone they trust. Uncle Wayne said he'd help with tuition for the extra coursework. She'd gotten into UC San Diego with a partial scholarship. The $52,000 in her college fund would cover the rest comfortably. Sometimes when I looked at the acceptance letter, I thought about how close we'd come to losing it all. My parents eventually apologized, though the words felt hollow after everything that had happened. They'd learned that their retirement security came from the daughter they'd dismissed as bitter and selfish, not the one they'd crowned as golden. Sunday dinners resumed after 6 months, but the dynamic had completely shifted. Now Tessa sat quietly while Chloe talked about her classes, her research, her dreams that were actually coming true. "I should have listened to you," my mother said one evening, helping me wash dishes while Tessa sat silent in the living room. "We both should have." "You chose to believe what you wanted to believe," I replied, handing her a plate to dry. "Derek told you what you wanted to hear. I told you the truth." The $52,000 remained untouched in Chloe's college fund, actually growing to $54,000 with interest by the time she started school. Wayne's investigation had cost me $3,000, but it had saved my parents' house and retirement. More importantly, it had revealed exactly who in our family could be trusted when money was involved. Derek's arrest made national news eventually. He was connected to similar schemes in 7 states, with losses totaling over $2 million. His photo appeared in articles about romance fraud and financial exploitation. Tessa had to see it every time she Googled her own name, their wedding photos forever linked to headlines about his crimes. "You could have warned me harder," Tessa said one day, almost a year after Derek's arrest. She'd started working 2 jobs to pay off the debts, her BMW repossessed, her downtown loft foreclosed. "Would you have listened?" I asked. "Or would you have accused me of trying to ruin your happiness like you did when I protected Chloe's fund?" She had no answer, because we both knew the truth. She'd been so desperate to prove she was the successful sister, the chosen one, the golden child who deserved everything, that she'd walked right into a con artist's trap. The saddest part was that Derek had targeted her precisely because she'd bragged so openly about her parents' money, about her sister's savings, about all the assets she thought she could access. Chloe started at UC San Diego the following fall, her tuition paid in full from the fund Tessa had tried to steal. She sent me photos from her first marine biology field trip, standing on a research boat off the coast of La Jolla, her smile brighter than any infinity pool in Bali could ever be. She was learning about ocean ecosystems, studying environmental law, becoming the person she'd dreamed of being. That's when I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Every thrift store trip, every skipped vacation, every packed lunch instead of eating out. My sister had tried to steal my daughter's dreams for 6 weeks of Instagram-worthy luxury. Instead, she'd taught Chloe the most valuable lesson of all: the people who truly love you protect your future, even when it makes them look like the villain in someone else's story. Derek got 18 years in federal prison. Tessa will be paying off his debts for the next 7. And Chloe? She's studying dolphins and learning to defend people who need protection from those they should be able to trust. That's worth more than $52,000. That's priceless. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Have you ever dealt with family members who felt entitled to your money? Tell us about it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about justice, family drama, and the sweet satisfaction of karma. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply protecting what's yours and letting the truth reveal itself.